Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to our service, which is today focused on the themes of lament and grief. Before we embark on those tough topics, though, before I get my hearing aids back in place, I'd like to express my absolute joy at being back here again in this room. Here we are in a situation that is as close to normal as anything we've experienced over the last 2 years. For those of you participating remotely, we hope our joy at being back here transmits itself to you through the ethers, and we will see you here face to face very soon, actively participating and reinforcing the purpose and spirit of this community. Whoever you are, whoever you love, and wherever you are in your journey of faith and search for meaning, you are truly welcome. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, welcome and deepen relationships, and act for a just and sustainable world. My name is Alex Schumacher, and I have the privilege of serving on your board of trustees. I am a committed Unitarian, believing that we are united in searching for guidance through our 8 principles. As is the case for many of you, no doubt, I am greatly disheartened by how our 6th principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, is being trampled in Ukraine. Changing the topic. Now, wherever we may be, let us remember and acknowledge the traditional territories and languages of all those whose ancestors were here. We recognize our responsibility to be stewards of this land and acknowledge that we do so in cooperation with the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, for whom this Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta is traditional territory. The people of the Blackfoot Confederacy include the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina Band of the Dene First Nation, and the Nakota First Nation, also known as Stoney, which here in Alberta includes the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley bands. Mohkinstsis, the Blackfoot word for what we now call the city of Calgary, is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In offering this land acknowledgement, we honor those who have long been its stewards and accept our responsibility to remain good caretakers. We acknowledge that Treaty 7, signed on September the 27th, 1877, was entered into as a collaboration between settlers and Indigenous people, making us all treaty peoples. I now invite the Reverend Kelly to light our chalice.
The words of the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison read, "The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There's a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the Church that assures us we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed." Let us worship together. And on that note, we have a special announcement from Susan about our partnership with the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good.
Hello, everyone. Wow, it's so nice to see you all in the flesh again. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Susan Ridley, and I, like every single member of this congregation, is a member of the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good. And our listening campaign for the upcoming year is starting up, and you may be wondering what on earth is a listening campaign. So I would direct you to two places, one for either the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good's website or our own e-news from last week, and you will see what a listening campaign is, which is to find out what are the current issues and things that you would like the Alliance to focus on for the three main areas that have been chosen this year. And some of you might be thinking, well, how did these areas get chosen? Why didn't I have a say? Well, you did by way of myself and Pam Rickey and Jocelyn Keith Asante and a bunch of other people who are on the various research action teams for the Alliance. And on February the 22nd, we voted at a delegates assembly to focus on mental health, environment and climate change, and input for the City of Calgary for the new council and the new mayor as to what things people in the Alliance recommend that we advocate for in terms of what goes into the budget. So this is your opportunity to have some of your concerns at least mingled with everybody else's concerns for what should be in the city's budget for the coming year. So if you are interested in doing the training, we're hoping that other people will join myself and Marcia Epstein, who've already done the training. And on this coming Thursday, March the 17th, Pam Rickey and Jocelyn Keith Asante are doing the training as well to learn how to become listeners for the people in our congregation. We hope with our teams to interview approximately 50 to 60 people in small groups. Don't worry, you're not going to be one-on-one, you're not going to be filmed unless you consent to it. You just need to give us your input for 3 questions. 1 about the mental health, 2 about climate and the environment, and 3, what would you like the City of Calgary's budget to focus on? What items are important to you? And the questions are directed towards those things. If you take the training on Thursday to be a listener, it would greatly assist Marcia, Jocelyn, and Pam and myself so that we can keep the groups small and we don't have to try and interview 20 people each. We hope that we could all just have to do or two at a time with 10 or 15 people. The Alliance would like to have everyone's responses into them by April 27th to direct the future advocacy work that we do. Mental health, as you may know, is a huge, huge issue in the schools right now and in society because of the pandemic. Of course, everyone is totally aware about the environment and climate change things. And the city budget, this is your opportunity to have some input. So even if you don't take the training to be a listener, which I hope, and Pam and Jocelyn and Marcy and I do, we would be looking for people to agree to be interviewed. And there'll be more about that in the coming weeks. Okay, thank you.
That's the beauty of the Calgary Alliance and community organizing. As members, we get to share our voices together and be heard, and it's that power of we that can make a difference. And the Calgary City Council is very amenable to input from the community. It really does get heard, and it really does make a difference. So please, when you're invited to share your ideas and your suggestions, please do that and help us be good participants and members in our Calgary Alliance and support of our city and all of our siblings here. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Shelley Thompson. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the interim minister here at Calgary Unitarians. And as we continue our theme for March of renewing faith, I'd like to remind you all once again that we have been calling, myself, the board, our Committee on Shared Ministry, have been calling folks to check in and connect and say hello and find out how you're doing, because it has been so long. This pandemic has gone on, and many of you have not been able to come in person. So if for some reason you haven't received a call yet, or haven't checked in, or things have changed since you check in, please give us a shout out on an email. I'm at minister@calgaryunitarians.ca, and the Committee on Shared Ministry is COSM@calgaryunitarians.ca. And if you reach out to us, we'd be delighted to reach out to you and have a good heart-to-heart. It's confidential, and it gives us that opportunity to reconnect and to let you know all the good stuff that's coming up. The church is still moving along, and we have a lot of great things happening. So please reach out if you haven't spoken to us yet. And of course, at any time, I'm always available. Thank you. And today especially, another opportunity to get together and visit. Our stewardship team is having a lunch out by the fire pit. I think they're bringing hot dogs and vegan dogs. And it'd be a great time for us to get together and talk about what makes this community so special to all of us. So I hope you can stay for lunch. Now, please rise in body and spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, Morning Has Come.
Everyone. It is so great to see all of you this morning. I'm Sheila McMaster, Director of Religious Education, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm very excited to be talking about lament and grief, but also resilience today. And so in this week's Children and Youth newsletter, we have about a list of 30 books for all different ages about making mistakes and trying again. And so that's a great way to learn resilience. And we also have a list of ways to turn worry, because this is kind of a time that many of us are feeling worried. So how to turn worry into wonder. And I'll give a few examples. So for example, if you find your mind thinking, I feel embarrassed if I'm gonna mess this up, and instead think, I wonder what will happen if I just try my best. Or another example would be, I'm really worried about asking a question. I feel so stupid that I don't know the answer, and instead wonder, I wonder if anyone else has this question to ask, and maybe they'll feel thankful if I'm the one who asks it. So as we go into our week, just think about things you're worried about and how to flip that into a question of wonder. And so we have a whole list of those in our Children Youth newsletter this week. So check those out. And this week's story is actually about a little tree growing all alone on a cliff and their kind of journey of lament and resilience. So I'll share that with all of you. I really like this story. It is called The Hugging Tree, and it's by Jill Niemark and illustrated by Nicole Wong. Story about resilience. On a bleak and lonely rock by a vast and mighty sea grew a lonely little tree where no tree should ever be. How she got there, no one knew. She sprouted stems and little leaves as tiny seed will do. There's hardly any dirt for me, no forest breeze, no birds, no bees, but I will do the best I can to make this rock my home. Her tiny roots pushed night and day, and bit by bit, the rock gave way. A smidge, an inch, a foot, then two, she grew and grew and grew, and the ocean hugged the rocky shore. I like you near me, little tree. Let's keep each other company. Soft gold sunbeams kissed her crown, warm as honey pouring down. At night she raised her branches high to greet the moon up in the sky. I wax and wane, I ebb and flow, I cycle through from full to thin, and when I'm done, I start again. That's how life is, you know. And one summer noon, a pair of loons landed on her canopy. A pretty tree, a sparkling sea. Shall we make this place our home and raise our baby chicks right here? The little tree warmed up with pride, and she spread her branches high and wide. I'll be your home, she replied. And can you tell me if you've seen the forest where my family grew? Well, we've built our nests in trees like you quite far from here. And so you blew many nights and many days. You flew on the wind, just like we do. And they built their nest and laid their eggs, and soon 2 baby chicks were born. And summer passed and autumn too, and the little tree turned red and gold. And then winter came with howling winds and a cutting cold that broke her boughs. And the loons flew south, and the sea all ice, and rock all snow, and the moon was lost in thunderclouds. Mighty cliff, hold me tight, don't let me blow away. Little tree, with all my might, I'll hold you close, night and day. And the storms will come and storms will go. And at last the sun melted the snow. But now the tree could not grow. The storm had torn her roots. And the moon gazed down and softly said, sometimes we lose our way, but with some help, we start again. That's how life is, you know. And soon a boy came running by, skipping stones into the sea. And when he saw the little tree, he stopped and stared. And he touched the tiny leaves, and he felt the ragged roots, and he shook his head and said, I can bring just what you need. I can help you, little tree. A tree can't hug a boy. It has no hands or arms, but it can hug you with its heart, and that is just as deep and warm. And every day the boy came back carrying a full backpack. And from the pack he took a tin and poured out rich brown earth. And he packed the roots and tucked them in. And he planted flowers round the tree and made a path for all to see. Now everyone will know that even on a granite cliff, a little tree can grow. And then he went to sleep and dreamed the things that boys dream of. Now every day, new people stop to rest beneath the little tree and dream the things we all dream of: to love, to share, to give, to dare, to grow just where we are. And to this very day, they come. For on a splendid sunny rock, by a warm and bright blue sea, a great big hugging tree grows just where she was meant to be. And sometimes all we need is just a little bit of help until our own roots can grow strong again. You know, a tree can't hug a boy. It has no hands or arms, but it can hug you with its heart, and it's just as deep and warm. So I'd like to send all of you a hug from my heart. And now a message from Stewardship.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Rickey, and I've been a member of Calgary Unitarians since 2016. Back in 2016, when my husband Robert and I were looking for a new place to live, we had 3 essentials that a city would have to have: a good healthcare system, an international airport, and a Unitarian community presence. Calgary fit the bill. Calgary Unitarians more than met our hopes and expectations. We found a congregation involved in social justice in a big way, a welcoming congregation, participating in Calgary's annual Pride Parade, a founding member of a citywide alliance of organizations working for the common good, a refugee committee, an environmental team, and more. We found a caring, radically inclusive congregation who supports its members and friends through all kinds of challenges and life changes. A children and youth program led by an engaging and creative director of religious education. Adult religious exploration programs, a fabulous and diverse music program led by the best music director ever. It didn't take us long to get involved. Mitch and Duff laughed when, having just had me sign the register as a new member, they came into the sanctuary to find me in the pulpit. Reverend Deborah had asked me to participate in a service. That started me on my way to the worship arts team, where I have enjoyed being involved in helping formulate Sunday services and make some presentations. It wasn't far from that to coordinating summer Sunday services for a couple of years. Being on this team, I got to know Reverend Deborah, Lara Shannon, Lynn Nugent, Mariana Louise, and Kathy Welburn, a great entry into the community. As Robert and I traveled most of the time until 2020, our involvement mostly consisted of volunteering for projects whenever we were in town. We helped with after-service coffee hour, greeting at the Panabeka door, passing the offering baskets, working in the kitchen for special events. I got a bonus from working with Dean and Joan Brown in the kitchen, from not knowing one end of a spatula from the other to now being able to make my own meals. I actually joined the Board of Trustees while we were still traveling, taking on whatever tasks I could handle from a distance. Being secretary was more of a challenge, but when COVID kept us in Calgary, that became easier. Being on the board has led to new friendships. Jane Ebern and her husband, Kevin, and Robert and I have become good friends and hiking and camping buddies. Marcia and I have had some fun lunches together. Robert and I have also taken the Building Your Own Theology program, and we've both been involved with the Truth and Reconciliation, Dismantling Colonialism, and Anti-Racism activities, which has led to even more friendships and, more importantly, real personal development. As a representative from Calgary Unitarians to the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good, I've become treasurer for that organization and a member of their strategy team. I've learned how to build relationships with city councillors and work on effective social justice campaigns. This has widened my circle of friends even more. Robert has recently donned the hat of the Wayside Pulpit team lead. Together with Alex Schumacher and Marcia, and with Reverend Shelley's input, he leads the process of creating messages that we project out to the community on the outside of our building. Then he paints the signs by hand and climbs the ladder in all sorts of weather to put them up. Robert and I have had the wonderful experience of building friendships in a new city where we knew virtually no one, with Unitarians and CACG people whose values, ethics, and morals align with our own. We pledge every year because we want this community to be here forever. We value our friendships as well as the support we find in exploring our own spiritual paths and the opportunity to be involved in building a better world. We increase our pledge a little bit every year, but this year we're able to ramp it up a bit more to meet the extraordinary recent challenges. We hope others will be able to do the same. Thanks.
Good morning. I guess I should use this. Welcome, everyone, both in our building and those of you that are taking advantage of the live streaming and might even still be in your jammies. I confess to having done some of that myself over our COVID time. My name is Lynn Nugent, and what I'm going to do this morning is just reflect a bit on renewing our faith in the context of when we are faced with the death of a loved one or life-changing loss. This morning, I'll share with you some of my thoughts, and it might be helpful if I begin by situating myself. First of all, I'm not a grief counselor. I have experienced grief myself, as you all have. Grief is part of our human journey. I've trained with death doula Sarah Kerr and with Alberta Health Services palliative care training for volunteers. I spend time being present with grieving folks in my hospice volunteer work, as well as when I officiate memorials as a lay chaplain. Now, does this make me an expert? No, it does not. However, I've spent time reading and reflecting about the journey of grieving, and I bring this to you this morning in the spirit of furthering our understanding of grief. Grieving and mourning are not well understood and supported in our culture at large, although more people, I think, are becoming aware and hopefully will soon have the critical mass to affect change. Supportive communities of faith are important as we work to change the dominant paradigm. Now, what do I mean by grief and by mourning? Grief counselor and educator Alan Wolfelt defines grief as internal. It's the internal meaning we give to the experience of loss. He stresses the importance of allowing ourselves to mourn. Mourning is the outward expression of grief. We're fortunate if we have a community to hold us in love and support as we grieve. Mourning rituals, both communal and individual, allow us to feel deeply and express our pain as we journey on the grief path, and make it possible for us to experience, eventually, a sense of renewed meaning and purpose in our lives. Now, What about faith? I feel like I have to do a little defining here because faith can be a hot button word in our community sometimes. I want to distinguish between belief and faith because these are sometimes collapsed as having similar meaning, and they're not the same thing. Belief lies in the mind. It's a cognitive, intellectual dimension of religion that's made up of ideas. Faith is deeper. Faith lives in that mysterious spiritual center of our being. It's a sense of safety and coherence, a sense of serenity, of courage, of loyalty, of comfort, a sense of feeling at home in the universe. And this definition comes from UU minister Jean Harrison Nuyar. So, if faith is a sense of safety and coherence and serenity and so forth, it's no wonder our faith, whatever it's centered upon, can shatter, or at the very least be deeply dented when we experience loss, whether that be a death or a life-altering illness or accident. Before COVID, one of my hospice volunteer responsibilities was to give tours to families who had been told that the death of their loved one was imminent and that hospice would be a good option for them. Many folks had that deer in the headlights look as they entered our building for the first time. Their world had been upended. Some of them were almost immobilized. Philosopher and grief counselor Thomas Attic tells us that as we grieve, we struggle to find our place in the world again. Our confidence is shaken. He describes the experience of grieving people using these words: dislodged, uprooted, estranged or alienated, fearful, anxious, vulnerable, victimized, helpless, powerless. The premise of his approach to grief work is recognizing that our journey involves relearning the world. And part of this has a spiritual component that I recognize as renewal of faith. Grief is not a simple or easy journey, and it is not linear. Death doula Sarah Kerr describes it as a circle. And grief counselor Samit Kumar, who wrote Grieving Mindfully, refers to the path as a spiral. Sarah Kerr tells us that grief and loss can be a profound catalyst for growth. We don't learn and grow in the same way when things are easy as we do when they are hard. Sarah describes this process initially as a descent. So you go around the circle here, and then there's ascent, and when you reach the top, there's a transformation of some kind. If we don't mourn and engage our grief, we short-circuit the transformation process. Descent into the depths and the following ascent are both needed for transformation. A major loss becomes part of us as we relearn our world. Grief will still ebb and flow, and even at times feel like a rogue wave, startling in its intensity. What will renewing our faith look like? In the beginning, it may be as simple or as difficult as finding enough faith in life just to get out of bed in the morning. What we thought was important will change. We may struggle with questions of meaning. We may question our spiritual values, our faith, whatever your belief system and your faith perspective may be. Your former faith may be deepened, or your vision of what constitutes ultimate reality and your place in the world may even be transformed. We do not choose or seek out the pain of loss of someone we love or other types of grief and suffering to experience growth. Life throws those experiences at us, and if we allow ourselves to grieve and to mourn fully, we may experience growth and change as we relearn our world and renew our faith. May it be so.
Now's the time when we share our joys and our sorrows with one another to benefit one another in this loving, holding community. Recently, the Western Region Ministers Group of Canada met, and we were treated to a workshop by Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens. And she is an expert in trauma-informed ministry. And one part of that session was about transforming trauma through ritual. So before we do our regular candles of care and concern, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about lament. We share here both celebrations and lament. Our practice of lighting the candles of care and concern is a collective ritual for both those joys and sorrows. And the placing of stones in the bowl of water is a collective ritual of lament, releasing into the loving space of community. There are really important reasons why we don't only share the good news, why we don't only share our joys. Collective lament takes us deeper into the wholeness of our being human. It's a healing practice that helps us metabolize or process through trauma, grief, and challenges. Evangelical minister Dr. Glenn Pakyim wrote a blog post called 5 Things to Know About Lament, which in his theology emphasizes the relationship with God to which laments are addressed in his tradition. But as Unitarian Universalists, most of us do not covenant with God, but we are a covenantal people with one another as members of an intentional faith community. And I have translated Pakyim's ideas about lament into language that applies to our covenantal relationship with one another. Number 1, lament can be thought of as an invitation into covenant. The congregation as faith community is covenanted to support, nurture, and hold one another in love. We show up for one another. Number 2, sharing our laments helps us grow and deepen our covenantal relationship. We attend to one another's needs. We know that we will be held gently with compassion and loving kindness. We cry here. As members of a beloved community, we bring our vulnerability, our challenges to the collective for care and comfort. We are in this way honoring the sacred relationships we have with one another. Number 3, lament is a pathway to connection with one another and the power of we. As we share at a deep, authentic level, we develop more genuine relationships with each other and with our faith. We are accepted for all of what and who we are. Number 4, lament is a request to the community to help us respond to life with courage, resilience, and hope. We're asking for backup when the going gets tough. And together, we can carry what one person cannot carry alone. And number 5, lamentation is a group spiritual practice of empathy and compassion. The author said it this way: lament is not only for the suffering, it's for solidarity with the suffering. This is why we light our global candle every week. Our loving hearts join together and widen the circle of compassion and concern. So today I will light our candles, one for all the joys and celebrations and good news, one for all the sorrows, the concerns, the cares that we need help to carry, and a global candle as our minds automatically go to Ukraine, to all of the suffering the world over caused by totalitarian regimes and all the forms of suffering, and for the world celebrations that are happening as we speak. We send our light and our love. Now, one of our traditions, one of our embodied collective rituals is singing together. And we especially love to sing, "I am sending you light." So I invite you all to share in this powerful collective form of both lament and celebration. It can be both the uplifting and the holding and sharing together. And if you're able to rise and body your spirit, another element that we can add in that's not as common for Unitarian Universalists is moving together. So just a gentle swaying back and forth while we sing, "I am sending you light." Attention on your breath, attention on keeping in flow, that you're releasing and sharing and connecting in an open way as we share this very powerful ritual. And during this time of singing, you're also invited to light our candles on either side of the sanctuary. The first person will have to come up and get a flame from our chalice to start that off. And we have our rocks and our water over there as well. Thank you, Lynn. So won't you please rise and body your spirit and join me in singing and swaying to "I am sending you light."
I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. No matter where you go, no matter where you've been, you'll never walk alone. I feel you deep within, and I'm sending you light to heal you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you and hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. No matter what you feel or what you choose to show, I'm always there for you, and so I want you to know that I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending just like you need to go. There is no need to worry. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you a light to hold you in love.
Have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone. One of my favorite poems by Miller Williams. It speaks directly to our topic of trauma-informed ministry. As I mentioned, Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens recently presented on this topic to the ministers of the Western region. We are the Yumok Wood Buffalo. Is that not a great Canadian name? She shared with us part of her presentation, Dancing in the Storm, Trauma and Resilience in the 21st Century. And the idea is, she tells us, trauma is the water we swim in. It's in the air we breathe, certainly in the news every morning, isn't it? And if we're working with people, we're working with trauma. So an awareness of how trauma affects people and how it shows up in our bodies, how it gets carried, is important information for us as a congregation when we want to be in authentic relationship with our whole selves. So it's a good idea for us to develop some of these trauma-informed practices, to be mindful and alert for how we can best care for one another. And we can take that perspective into our justice work as well. Reverend Dr. Elizabeth tells us, good news. If you're still alive and relatively functional, you already know a lot about trauma and resilience. Trauma lives in our bodies, but so does the wisdom around what we need. She teaches us that when we're able to manage and metabolize our stress and trauma well, we're inside of a window of tolerance where we're grounded, flexible, open and curious, present in our bodies and minds, and we're able to self-regulate our emotional states. We can get through the stress, we can let it flow through us and release it and not carry it with us. But if we get stuck, we can be hyper-aroused, anxious, afraid, so much energy that we can't focus on anything else. Or we can be hypo-aroused, where we're depressed and numb and cut off. And in either of those states, we've literally stopped the metabolism, and we're not processing in those states. And it can really interfere with our ability to respond resiliently as our best selves to the world around us. She gives us 5 helpful tips for developing our trauma-informed perspective. It's a core responsibility, if we think of it this way, as a covenantal community. We have a responsibility to one another to be trauma-informed. She says you've got to know your own story, excavating your personal trauma history and identifying your triggers so that you can take good care of yourselves. It's that put on your own oxygen mask first and then help others. She says you have to self-monitor and self-soothe using techniques and strategies like breath work. For some people, they like to knit when they're sitting. Some people do art, dance, movement. Every body needs to find its own ways to express and process and not tense up too much, and then give our bodies the attention they deserve. She says we need to breathe into the discomfort of being on the edges of that window of tolerance, a little too anxious, a little too numb. Just lean in. It's not a bad thing. Remind yourself. It's part of being alive. Say, I've been here before. It didn't last forever. So you want to build on your past successes to be resilient. This is a big one. She suggests we develop a personal theology of trauma, sin, and suffering. This is big. We're not handed these in Unitarian Universalism. We have to decide for ourselves, what is the meaning and purpose of all of this? So that's one that I suggest we do in community. It's very helpful to talk to other people about how they cope with those big existential questions of humanity. And then Peter Levine, who's an expert in the field of somatic experiencing, talks about the practice of penduluming. Practice deliberately alternating between being really present in a supported way, in a loving community, processing your trauma, and then taking a break from it, not to deny it, but to turn toward life, the joy, the beauty, the wonder of life. This is why we do both joys and sorrows. It's why we come together in community to help each other out when one of us gets really low. There can be this compassion and this sharing of joys and life-affirming beauty that can help lift us all up. It's really about taking good care of ourselves and each other. And we have the opportunity to do that here in Faith Community. So it's a good idea to have your own care plan, self-care plan. When we talk about spiritual practices, we talk about this. And it's not an exercise regimen or a diet or anything harsh or demanding. It's really about listening to the body and developing self-care practices that help us feel whole, that help us feel that we have the comfort and openness, that we've released that which needs to be released, and we can be resilient when life comes at us again, because we know it will. So these become embodied spiritual practices. I like to think of them that way. This is part of our faith formation, the opportunity we have to grow and learn in this community and on our own individually. Pam was speaking about that earlier. So let's take a few moments. We'll move into a time of meditation, and we'll use some of the words from Reverend Dr. Elizabeth, and she asks us to communicate with our bodies. As trauma lives in our bodies, the wisdom that will show us how to work with trauma lives in our bodies, she reminds us. So take a couple of moments. You might want to close your eyes, make sure you're as comfortable as you can be, and do a body scan. See if there's any place where there's some lingering trauma history, there's something that it just goes with you wherever you go. Where is that in your body? And how can you tend to it, love it, be compassionate toward it? You might feel ready to relax a little bit. It might be the right time to release or shift that energy from that place in your body, or it might just need more love as it is. Take a moment of silence.
piece that has several different parts to it. Some of you know this one really well, and you know that you can sing any part of this at any moment. For those for whom this may be a brand new piece, feel free to sing along with me as we go. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe.
Thank you for leading into our circle this morning and spending time together, reflecting on the ways we can expand our hearts and minds and be more fully present in community as people who care deeply, love fiercely, and unite faithfully in beloved community. And as Pam so eloquently shared with us this morning, this is the season when we make our pledges to this congregation to show our love and support for the community that gives us so much. And the reason we ask for pledges, when you will give us a good guess as to what you may be able to contribute over the next year, that allows us to make our budget. And we can dream big about all the mission and ministry we're able to do together once we have that budget assembled. And so it's very, very helpful in our planning if we have your good guess as to what you're going to be able to contribute. And it can always change. We know circumstances change. But if you would be willing to share that with us, your generosity is so greatly, greatly appreciated. And we will be having our stewardship lunch today, a reminder again, and our stewardship Sunday is next Sunday, the 20th. So if you are willing and able to make your pledge or make a payment on your pledge, or just want to make a straight donation to us today, this is the time to do so. And our For Others recipient this month, you may remember from last week, we met Jacob, who's a member of Permeate. This is a group of civic-minded young adults who value sustainability and justice. And because they're young adults acting under their own moral authority, Turns out they don't actually have an official registered charity to their names. So what we're going to do as a registered charity, we need to give only to other registered charities if we're going to give them money. So what we're going to do is, with the collection we take for Permeate, their big project right now is a permaculture garden at the Center for Spiritual Living in Southeast Calgary. It's an industrial area down there, and that garden is really going to bring some much needed oxygen and greenery down there. So we'll purchase gardening supplies for them, and we'll help them. They're going to give us a list of things that would make that job easier for them. Maybe some flowers, who knows, all kinds of good things. So again, your support is greatly appreciated. And while we take our offering, please remain seated and join me in singing Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come to me. Sing in my heart the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots all be close, wings set free. Spirit of life, come to me.
You know what happens if we turn on our Zoom too loud? It does this to us. So it's like, where's the sweet spot where we can hear it, but it doesn't do the crazy reverb? All right. Thank you to Pam and Robert for being our ushers this morning. We're still figuring out, oh yeah, there's supposed to be ushers, right? Isn't that a thing? I think that's a thing. Who knows how to do that thing? So if anybody would like to help us with that, if you remember way back when we used to have ushers, we would love to have some help and have a team of ushers again, because it's a thing, as it turns out. We're going to extinguish our chalice, but we're taking the love of warmth and community out there with us wherever we go. We've got that inner congregation with us, we know, so that whatever we're facing, we know we are not alone. So again, please stay for coffee, real coffee in Wickenden, or virtual coffee hour if you're with us on Zoom. And then come on out to lunch at the fire pit. That's going to be fun. It's a nice warm day. So if you are with us online, you're going to get that link to the coffee chat after we sing here today. So we're going to sing, one of my favorite collective rituals. We're going to sing again. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing, We Are.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We